Welcome to the Unstick Your Mind podcast on Mimika TV. Get ready to get unstuck, align with your true purpose, and unlock your God-given potential. Back in South Africa when I was trained, my first job was actually in TV production. And I was a TV broadcaster for a few years, and then I got into the production side and into photography and the creative side. So for me, I've always been about creating something out of nothing. And maybe it's the South African in me, because back in the day, in the 80s, growing up during apartheid, we didn't have access to overseas. We couldn't get import or export any products. We had to kind of just be inventive, and we had to make things out of nothing. And to me, that's always exciting, is to be able to imagine something and to dream about something and to create something. I mean, today, all the innovations around us have been created from someone's thoughts. Someone came up with an idea, or needed to scratch an itch, or found something that was missing, or felt they could do something better, or just felt there wasn't, nobody was servicing that need. And that's what I love about entrepreneurship, is the ability that you can do and create anything. And especially here in the USA, like, of course, I have a lot of friends and followers who are all around the world. And one thing America does well is encourage people to be able to dream big and to achieve whatever they put their minds to. Now, on the other side, though, we are a little spoiled because we have things easy. High-speed internet. We have access to, a lot of technology. Rest of the world, not always as available, but there's many opportunities. And I think if we just get ourselves to think right about the opportunities and just to think, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to shift my thinking? And you can position yourself to change your status quo, that in 30 days, 90 days, in a year's time, you can be in a very different position. But it all starts with today and deciding how to think about it. Well, being an entrepreneur, I'm always coming up with some new ideas, and I'm definitely one of those luminaries, likes to see things before they come into fruition. So for me, about 3 years ago, when I really got into coaching, I went back to school and got certified, and I've actually been doing a neuroscience diploma as well. So I'm like getting my 45-year-old brain back to okay, I got to submit these things. But it's been fun. I just love the idea that it doesn't matter how old you are, you can achieve what you want to achieve. So I'm kind of my own guinea pig. So as I test and try things, I then try to figure out another easier, quicker, faster way to do stuff. And really what my big goal is, I would love to be able to create a whole network, a global network of other mindset trainers using my signature program that I've developed, and just to help people, because my view is I believe we should live with mental wholeness. Now, we have mental health, and we talk about mental health a lot. And I will say I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I haven't been clinically trained. But I do believe there's a part of all of us that wants more from life. But sometimes we need a little bit of a kick up the pants. Sometimes we need someone to help us, call us off our own excuses and help us put it in position. So that's why I'd like to talk about what I do is I'm your personal trainer for your mind. So just like when you go to the gym, everybody wants to look fit and healthy and lose weight, but no one wants to put the work in. But here's the thing. It's when you put the work in and you do the sweat and you push against the weight and against the resistance, and you realize it's strengthening you, and you keep doing that on repetition, then you realize, you look back and you go, wow, I've actually achieved something. And so my whole mission is I want to birth a movement of being able to change people's mindsets about, you don't have to wait to be sick to deal with your mental health. You shouldn't have to just say, well, now that I'm ill, now I need to take medication. It's like, how can we look at it from a wholeness perspective? Like, how can, when we talk about diets, I mean, this diet, the Atkins diet, the keto diet, everyone's like, I want to lose weight by what I'm eating. We go to the gym, we spend so much time and effort in considering our physical health, but we don't put a lot of wholeness mindset into our mind. Like, how do we look after our mind? Like, how are we hydrating? Are we sleeping well? Are we taking good supplements? Are we eating properly? Not just for weight loss, but for actual cognitive health. So that's really where my goal is, and what my plan is for the coming years, is to really build that out and to really transition and change the way the world thinks about mental wellness. Your brain uses 20% of the oxygen of your body. So that's a lot if you think about it. And if we are not oxygenating our brain, which means hydration, drinking water, like sometimes you're like, I have a headache. So what we do is we grab, the Advil, we go and take a pill, a painkiller, instead of thinking about, why do I have a headache? Like, my always first call is, why do I feel like this? Why do I think like this? And oftentimes we're not really aware, and our body is always talking to us. Pain is good. Pain is telling you something. Anxiety is not a condition. It's your body talking to you. But what's unfortunately happened in society is that if you're not feeling good all the time, then all of a sudden you feel like something's wrong. Well, no, anxiety is like, and if we didn't have pain receptors, we could really hurt ourselves. People would be killing themselves if they didn't understand the severity of what pain receptors do. So your body is always talking to you, like, when you say you have butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous, or you have a gut feeling about something, or you don't have a good vibe, like you get the hairs at the back of your neck stand up when something creeps you out. That is all your body, your physiological body, really coming in connection with what your mind and your intuition, which is really your spirit. So my form of training isn't just about the physiological part of your brain. We have our mind, which is how we think, but we also have our brain, which is our physical, like the physical brain matter in our mind, in our skull, that needs attention, that needs water, and it needs nutrition and sleep. But we also need to consider things like habits. And that's part of the training that I do, is take people through this process of reimagining and looking at what hurts and harms you and what's good for you. And habits is a big thing. But the biggest problem that I always have is that people are not thinking about what they're thinking about. They're just kind of going with the flow. And unfortunately, we've become a society of feelings, meaning we are driven by how we feel. I don't feel confident. I don't feel motivated. I don't feel happy, so I'm not going to do it. But listen, honey, your feelings are the last thing to catch up. You need to decide, I want to do this. Like if I want to lose weight, I'm making a mental decision and a commitment to myself. Doesn't matter how I feel, whether I'm tired or I feel like I want to grab the cookie, not the running shoes. If you've made a decision and a commitment to yourself, that's when change happens. That is the difference between people like, I'm also very much into studying this whole athletic mindset. Like, what is the difference between high-performing athletes and, high achievers? And there isn't anything different between them and us, between you, me, and them, is that they've made a decision not to give up. They've made a decision to push through. They've made a decision that even when they are so tired and they want to throw up, they get up and they do it again. And they do it again, and they do it again. They've decided that they are not going to fail, and even failure is a whole other thing. I don't even consider it failure. It's experiments, as far as I'm concerned. Is you just experimenting a different way of doing things. But again, that's why I say, if you decide about something, and even the psychiatry talks about it. You have to make the decision, and then your feelings will catch up eventually. But we are so driven by our feelings. And if you think about it, your feelings are like a 2-year-old having a tantrum. Now, if you're any parents out there, if you've ever dealt with a 2-year-old having a tantrum, you know what to deal with them. You put them or yourself in timeout, because you cannot reason with the 2-year-old having a hissy fit. Because inherently, the part of our brain that is our primitive brain is wired to avoid discomfort. So if you just think about it, the 2-year-old doesn't want to go have a nap. The 2-year-old wants to eat its candy. The 2-year-old wants to stay up late. But we know as parents that we need to make better decisions for our children. So the same thing, if we can understand that primitive brain is always going to want to take us back to being that petulant child. If we can say, no, I'm in control of my brain. I'm the adult here. I get to decide that we need to go to bed early. So switch off the Netflix. I get to decide that no more sugar after 6 p.m. Otherwise I can't go to sleep. We get to be the mature one in this relationship with ourselves. But we've often become so like, we just go with the flow. We allow the 2-year-old to shout louder, and we allow her or him to just bulldoze our decisions. And eventually then what happens is we end up feeling guilty or resentful or unhappy or anxious or depressed. We end up in that situation. Now, of course, I'll say this isn't about, there are some instances where you need, clinical help. And as I said, this is not medical advice. I have to disclaim that. Sometimes we do need more invasive and more clinical training and clinical help. So I definitely would advise, if you feel any serious issues of mental health, definitely seek out a professional. But what I'm referring about is making those decisions and those choices to where you are able to shift your world through the choices and your own power, your own self-power, because we all have choice. That's one thing in life that that makes us human is the power of choice. And we get to choose. We don't need to let the 2-year-old drive our day. We don't need to let her have a hissy fit and go, oh my gosh, it's going to be a terrible day. And oh my gosh, then all of a sudden you start becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you start thinking it's going to be an awful day, well, then what happens is confirmation bias happens. And then you start confirming your own negative words. So words is another thing. Thoughts are another thing. Habits as well. But all of that is what makes us human. It's the human condition. And that's what makes me excited about it, is really giving people an alternative way of looking at things. Instead of saying, nothing's wrong, you aren't broken, it's fixable. We can help you. There are tools and there are ways if you're willing to look at it and putting in the work. But society is microwave this, app for here, and app for that. Everything wants to be overnight. Unfortunately, there isn't any easy button. There is, sorry to say, if we were looking for a quick fix, definitely isn't it. This is not how it works, because that'll eventually leave you disappointed. But again, it just really comes down to your thoughts and making that decision today that I'm going to make my tomorrow different by the choices and my self-power, and saying no more. I'm not putting up with this anymore. I want something new. I want something different. Einstein has that quote that says, doing the same thing over and over is called insanity. So if you want a different result, you need to do something. Take the steps, follow a process, and see results. Because I'm very big about results. I'm not going to just wax lyrical and just tell you, think positive. No, that's not how life works. You actually have to put feet to the ground. There is some actual things you have to do physically and intentionally that don't come through wishing, because wishing ain't a strategy. And I'm always open to hearing what other people's viewpoint is, because I can guarantee you that if you have an idea for something, somebody else has probably already thought about it or has come at it at a different angle. And I'm very much a big believer in collaboration. I don't get jealous if someone else has got a similar idea. I'm like, ooh, well then maybe if we put our two heads together, we can create something greater, because two heads are better than one, right? This is a way to connect and to network and to get the message out there, because I believe the more of us that can really step up and put our hearts on our sleeve and say, this is what I believe, this is how I feel I can serve people, then I think the world's going to be a much better place. But really what neuroscience is catching up with what a lot of things in the Bible have talked about, renewing your mind, take your thoughts captive, which basically means think about what you're thinking about. But having a faith element, I really believe that even for people that are non-Christians, we all have to have an element of faith in ourselves and the process and in what we're doing in order to get up in the morning. Because if you don't believe in yourself, you won't show up. You won't take the opportunity. You will discount yourself and think, oh, well, that's not for me. It's good for her, but it's never for me. And especially with the women I work with, women are notoriously bad at this. It's like, oh, that sounds great, but I don't think I'm good enough, or I'm old enough, or I'm young enough, or I'm ready enough, whatever, enough. And without that self-belief, you're not going to believe enough to motivate yourself to actually take the action. And here's the thing is, confidence is not a feeling. It's a decision. So you're going to decide, I'm going to do this and I'm going to pursue confidence. Where we unfortunately think we wait to feel confident, but it's the other way around. Confidence happens after you take the action. So for me, my whole philosophy is that you need that faith in yourself. And of course, you need a faith in a higher power, because I truly believe, God, a lot of people like to refer to as the universe, but I like to give God the credit where credit is due, because it's the God of the universe. Some people agree with me, which is fine. And those who don't, that's fine. But I firmly believe, and I've seen this happen, that when you can transition your thought process into believing in something bigger than yourself, you take your eyes off yourself and you start to achieve things bigger. You start to see the world as much bigger and the opportunities instead of within the little four walls of your own ability. Because I have an inherent problem with self-help, because there's the word self. And ourselves are limited. We don't always know what we don't know. That's why we pursue education, why we pursue knowledge, because there's always going to be somebody else who's quicker, smarter, richer, whatever, more than me. But if I can realize that my contribution is valuable, and that by coming together with others and having that faith in the greater scheme of things, and like that God has our back, that He has designed things for a purpose. You were born for a purpose, on purpose, for a time such as now. then you can really shift into that of like, I believe I'm here for a reason. And you start to shift into that purpose thinking, and then all the things fall into place. Then you realize when things get tough, you're ready and you're willing to be able to put up with the hard stuff, because when you have a greater purpose in mind, that is the best motivation that you need. We're going through training. If you've ever watched Wonder Woman, she has a bigger purpose, right? She knows she's born for a purpose. You see where I'm going with this? And she's willing to go through the training, and she realizes she has to get stronger. There comes a time when she knows she's ready, but she's not ready until she's ready. But we have to put the work in. So that's definitely my favorite movie and my favorite character. So commitment can come in very many shapes and forms. But commitment to yourself is a really intrinsic and important part of the process, because if you keep giving up on yourself, you'll never see follow through. And what happens is you end up in resentment and like hope deferred. Like you eventually just get so disappointed and you get brokenhearted. But at the end of the day, you need to ask yourself why. And I would even say ask yourself why 3 times. In actual fact, Toyota, the man who developed the Toyota cars, they have a thing where in order to get down to when they are making innovations is to ask the question why 7 times. Because it will really get down to your motivation and your deep reasoning. Because a lot of the time we follow what our conscious thoughts are. But our subconscious is actually so much more powerful that a lot of the time, when you feel like, oh, this just feels awful, there's something about this person that I don't trust, or that gut and that intuition, like we are made up of spirit, mind, and body. And oftentimes we like to put them in different boxes, right? But commitment comes when you are aligning yourself with your heart's yearning, which is your spirit saying, I really want to do this, or I really don't feel comfortable doing this. With your reasoning, because how many times have you made a decision then you talk yourself out of it, right? I'm sure a lot of us are like, that sounds great, oh, but I don't know if I could do that. And like eventually what happens, you make excuses and then you live in regret. And I'm like, I want to get to heaven one day and go, I did it, I used everything you gave me, I have the battle scars and the wounds, but I'm like, I made it. I want to use everything that God gave me and be able to bring a whole lot of people with me through this process. Because that's what commitment is. It's that decision. You have to decide, like, who are you going to honor? Are you going to honor that sort of petulant child or the negativity? And oftentimes it comes back to our childhood, especially if you've had a history of trauma. And trauma can be, in different shapes or form. I mean, being bullied or having a broken childhood or a broken family or whatever. I mean, I believe every human has been through some form of trauma that you've had to deal with. But unfortunately, a lot of us don't know how to move past that. And maybe because of previous seasons or previous mirroring or modeling of behaviors from parents, or we stop believing in that and we stop showing up for ourselves, and then commitment wanes. And it's great. It's like we're coming up to a new year and we say, okay, I have a New Year's resolution and this is what I'm going to do. You know how long people keep the New Year's resolutions? 4 days. 4 days, and then life comes at them like, oh, this is too hard. And then what happens is you get behind, or the pounds are not going as quick as you want, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, I'm so far behind, I may as well just ignore it now. Oh, I may as well eat the whole box of cookies. I may as well just give up. There's no point in even trying. No, it doesn't matter how far in or how bad or how severe, or there's always hope. But you have to make the decision. Am I choosing me or am I choosing my circumstance? Am I going to decide to choose to be that miserable person who feels terrible about their weight, or is not happy in the job, or not happy in a relationship? Or am I going to decide, because no one can decide for you but you. You're in control of you. Like, you've got to take you wherever you go. That if you're miserable and you're, you're grumpy and you're angry, like, you can blame everybody else as much as you like, but you still live with you. And unless you make the decision to change, as I said, like in any kind of intervention type thing, like even the AAs, the reason why they say when they train people to say, hi, my name is and I'm an alcoholic, is the awareness and it, like, okay, this is what it was, but things are changing. And I'm making the decision that this is not going to be the rest of my life. I'm going to change things. And that's the difference between us and animals, is we get to choose. Like, hello, we actually get the opportunity, and we're living in the 21st century. We are more spoiled. We have more opportunities. We have more comforts. more access to things, there really is no excuse. Like, we're not living in mud huts, and we're not living in even 100 years ago with with lack of health care. And there are still a lot of people living in the world like that. But for the most part, we don't really have an excuse. We've got opportunities. So are we squandering them? Are we gonna use? The choice is up to you, right? Well, the difference between a growth and a fixed mindset, again, is really down to the choice. Like, do I want to change, or do I want to stay the same? And here's the other thing is, people who don't want to change, you can't change someone else's mind. They have to come to a realization. And oftentimes the shift happens where either something traumatic happens, or some major life change, or something happens to shift the status quo. Because, when things are in a routine and there's no reason to grow, most people don't really experience this kind of shift and change in having to readjust and rethink and get back to the drawing board. I mean, I'm an immigrant and I've immigrated twice. So I've had this happen twice, and actually 3 times in my life. So that's the idea of being resilient. But we've all been forced to kind of have more of a resilient mindset. Like, okay, there are things that are out of my control that I cannot control. So there's no point in stressing about stuff I can't control. What is in my control? Like, what can I do about this? And then you can make the change. But there are people who are just happy to be in a fixed mindset, who are either driven by fear and don't want to change. And the sad news is you can't change them. You can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. So as much as you'd wish it and you'd want it and pray for it and hope and dream, if that person doesn't come to that realization themselves, there's nothing you and I can do, which is sad. A lot of people do die in that fixed mindset, never achieving their goals, never achieving their true potential, which is why I'm on the mission to do what I do, is to get people out of the gutter, out of that stuckness, get them moving, give them a little bit of a kick up the pants, because sometimes often people need accountability, and they need a little bit of a let's get going by actually showing it that it's been done before and that's doable and you can do it. Like, I have never met anybody who he's not fixable. If there isn't anybody that I've ever met who cannot change, but they have to want. So how badly do you want it? And it doesn't have to be a bad change. It could be a good thing. It's like graduating from college and starting a job, or immigrating a country, or getting married, or your kids leaving home and now you're an empty nester, or getting a divorce, or losing a loved one, or any major life shift that changes the status quo, because we go along life and we go through Groundhog's Day and we repeat Groundhog's Day, day over day. But then when something happens and the weather changes, and all of a sudden the comfort is gone, like the rug gets pulled out. Unfortunately, most people's reaction is to feel like a victim, and like they feel like the world is falling down and the sky is falling, like Chicken Little will cry. But yes, and things happen, and it's sad and it's horrible, but at the same time, I think we can't avoid these issues. We have to go through them. That's why we call it breakthrough. You can't like break around or break under. You have to break through. But the point of that is that you are breaking through resistance. You are breaking an old way to create something new. And when you do, like, I always believe growth is like an elastic band, that the more you stretch it, the more capacity it has, but it tends to not go back to its old ways. Like, once you've grown and stretched yourself, you don't necessarily go back to the way you were before, because now you've learned something new. You've grown in a new way. You have more maturity. You have more wisdom. You have more insight. And life becomes so much more fun when you have more of a resilient attitude. Like, I can handle this. Like, I have had things happen to me and I'm like, really, is that the worst that could happen? Because if that's the worst that could happen, I know I can continue with tomorrow. So just the encouragement for those who are listening, that no matter how hard or how difficult or how awful it feels where you're at, there's always a silver lining there, and the morning always comes. You just need to dig your heels in and say, I'm not giving up. I know the light's coming. The darkness is going to fade. I just need to really decide to make the choice to stick with it and to seek out the help that you need when you need it. Because I think a lot of us have felt very isolated over this last couple of years, and feeling like we have to be heroes unto ourselves, or not asking for help. And I think that vulnerability is key to really reaching out and saying to someone, I'm really struggling with this. Can you help me? And people inherently are good. I really believe, if you have an issue and you want help, people are not going to say, no, I'm not going to help you. I'm like, maybe if you're the Grinch, but I haven't met many Grinches. Well, just think about it. If you threw a party, right, and you gave out the invitations, not everybody's going to want to come to the party, but if you make it sound, people drive by and see the guys outside having so much fun, and they're having a barbecue and the balloons and the cake and the music and everyone's laughing and dancing. You're having a fun enough time. Believe me, people are going to want to join your party. So don't be a party pooper. Don't be oh, woe is me, and do an Eeyore on everybody and like, oh, that's so bad. Well, I've so sucked. No one wants to be at that party. That's called a pity party, and it's usually just one person who goes to those. And that's the person who's throwing the party. I want to have a really fun party where everyone feels like I want to be part of that energy. I want to come and, get involved and meet people. So you've got to be the life of the party. You've got to provide or show what it's like to live in that positivity, live in that light, and just be a magnet to making people feel like they're welcome and that they can be themselves and they can connect and they can make friendships and they can eat cake and they can have fun. So as I said, it's just when you are being the best version of you, and of course it's not going to happen all the time, but if you are at least working towards being the best version of you, people cannot help but follow you like the Pied Piper, because you are emitting the energy and the life and the positivity and the joy. It's magnetic. People cannot help but look at you when you are joyful and when you can find joy even in the hard things. That's why gratitude is, we hear about this a lot, gratitude. And from a neuroscience perspective, your brain actually needs to shift into gratitude in order to grow, because you can't be grumpy and grateful at the same time. It's actually an impossibility. So if you're feeling really grumpy, start to think about how you can be grateful for what the little things you have, because with gratitude grows. Your positivity grows through gratitude. So the more, like Mama used to say, count your blessings, right? Count them on your hand and until you run out of fingers and toes, and you keep going. And I think if we can just get back to that, instead of the comparison and the judgment and the division, if we can start to realize we're more alike than we are different. We realize that everybody's going through something hard, and I have something of value, that whether it's a kind word or a text or, hey, I was thinking about you, just a little bit of encouragement and reaching out to people, I think it's going to make the world a whole better place if we're just willing to step out of our comfort zones and put ourselves out there. I think, the world and our own attitudes and happiness will thank us. Are you ready to change your brain to change your life? Discover how to break limiting beliefs, stop self-sabotage, and unlock your full potential by rewiring your brain using neuroscience, coaching, and faith-based principles. Come and join my coaching program, Unstick Your Mind, today.